Yes, thank you very much. Will you share my presentation? In the BCC, we've got 3 countries who share one marine ecosystem, the Benguela Current Large Marine Ecosystem. We've got multiple and increasing activities with user and user environment conflicts in our marine ecosystem. The 3 countries, which are Angola, Namibia, and South Africa, introduced MSP in 2014 to integrate conservation, industry, and social interests. MSP was initiated due to 2 converging interests: ecologically, to implement the ecosystem approach, and socioeconomics, to establish an enabling framework for a growing sustainable blue economy. Next slide, please. Under the Benguela Current Convention, a regional working group on MSP was created in 2016. Government officials from each country from the main marine sectors, which include fisheries, mining, petroleum, transport, and environment. It differs a bit in the countries, but most of these sectors are represented. And then there is provision made for the countries to nominate, apart from the 4 main members from the respective sectors, another member to the regional working group. The regional working group reports to the Ecosystem Advisory Committee of the Benguela Current Convention, and it meets up to 2 times per year. Of course, COVID also gave us some challenges, but we just last week had our online meeting. A regional working group on ecologically and biologically significant marine areas, the so-called EPSAs, has also been established to inform the MSP process by identifying the EPSAs of the region. And of course, that is very important for defining the transboundary EPSAs that you have all countries involved. Next slide, please. So what does the regional MSP do? What did it to date, and what are the next steps? It supports the MSP process at a national level through the exchange of experiences and knowledge. We update each other on a regular basis on the national processes. We learn from and with each other, and we did that from early stages of the national level MSP processes, and it has enabled an intra-regional capacity development and contributed to the fact that now we have similar approaches across the countries. The regional working group has also exchanged with other regional organizations on MSP, like the European Communion, HELCOM, WASAP, Barcelona Convention. And the BCC regional working group has actually attended the MSP meeting in Paris in 2017. One of the key outputs of the regional working group is a regional MSP strategy, which facilitates a coherent and consistent approach to MSP across borders. So it's basically a very high-level guideline to MSP in the region. And the next steps include that we want to establish a spatial data portal under the Benguela Current Convention, where we store and make available all the MSP relevant data, to have pilot MSP in cross-border geographies in and around the shared EPSAs. As I mentioned, the EPSAs are a very important feature in our MSP. And what we do with the transboundary EPSAs, we define the EPSAs first, plus proposed management plans, which then are fed to the national working groups to work on these. And of course, the national working groups have the final say on the national MSP, but seeing that we have joint guidelines, we hope that the transboundary plans will speak to each other then. Next slide, please. As I mentioned a few times, we have also national MSP structures in all 3 countries. The lead ministries for MSP work closely with other ministries and government agencies through formally established national working groups. In all 3 countries, we have national MSP working groups, which consist of mainly government institutions, but also tertiary education institutions in some countries. The national working group report to higher government structures through the respective lead ministry or department. And each national working group has established specialized subgroups to deal with certain tasks. Like, for example, we have, in addition to the regional EPSA working group, we've got a national EPSA task team in each country. And participation in the task team goes beyond government structures. We also have, for example, specifically data task teams to facilitate the national data collection in the countries. Next slide, please. In all three countries, we have divided the marine space, or the countries have divided their marine space into sub-national planning units based on human uses and on ecologically boundaries. And each country chose one area for their first marine plan. And I don't know if you see my next slide, but I don't see it yet, where we can see how the countries have split up their marine areas into sub-plans. And each country has selected one area, which happened to be not one of the transboundary areas, to develop their first marine spatial plan. But we will go to the transboundary areas very soon as well. Next slide, please. The countries developed knowledge-based reports, and we've seen that in the previous presentation as well, the so-called current status report that captures the best available data and information on current activities in the marine environment, and also future needs of different sectors and key issues to be addressed through marine spatial planning. The MSP legislation and enabling blue economy policy framework, yes, that's the correct slide now, are already in place in some countries, like South Africa has an MSP Act, or they're busy being developed in the other countries. Namibia is busy developing a blue economy policy. Angola and Namibia have developed a first marine spatial plan, and these plans are pending management approval and also external, which means outside government stakeholder consultations. And South Africa is in the process of drafting their first plan. Next slide. So some reflections on our MSP. Although MSP is driven by economic agendas, its potential to contribute to critical conservation and social objectives is recognized throughout and has been key in initiating MSP. In implementing a systematic conservation planning process as a dedicated sub-process to MSP, that has been a key in supporting the ecosystem-based and precautionary approach as part of the MSP. As I said, the EPSAs have been basically the basis on which the marine spatial plans are developed. They are treated like any other layer, like the transport layer, as the conservation layer. And the EPSAs also provide priority areas for future expansions of the MPA networks in the region. Next slide, please. The collaborative approach, both on the national and regional level within the BCC, is very critical. Similar approaches to MSP can be observed in the three countries in terms of process design, data governance, and spatial management approach itself, e.g. the identifying of priority areas and the zoning approach, leading to a solid foundation for a regional coherent approach to MSP. So by having these common goals and approaches, we foresee that our transboundary MSPs will be not contradictory, but will talk to each other. Three factors contribute to this at the regional level: the convening and enabling power of the Benguela Current Convention, which all countries have ratified, and its ability to instigate thematic regional working groups. So across the whole BCC, through the Benguela Current Convention, we can instigate working groups to work on specific topics like, for example, the EPSA. Consistent technical and advice by the Maritime project, as well as funding, has been crucial in this whole process on the national and the regional level. Similar planning traditions and government systems in the past, especially with a close connection between Namibia and South Africa, of course, also has made a few things easier. The regional level plays an important role in that it creates a platform for exchange and learning environment for MSP authorities and stakeholders across the 3 countries. And next slide, please. Furthermore, MSP is not entirely new to our region. Existing capacities and experience within integrated coastal zone management, fisheries management, and MPAs are there and have been used in the process. We have a lot of people in the process that have experience in those fields. The introduction of MSP at the current stages of marine development with relatively low but increasing intensities of use is a strategic advantage for the BCC countries, because we're not faced with a congested, highly competitive ocean with governance problems already occurring. We have a fairly few users, and we can, with forward thinking, plan and avoid a lot of the problems that we face in other areas which are much more congested. MSP in the BCLME region, therefore, has the potential to prevent increasing and new conflicts proactively. Of course, we also have some existing conflicts, but they are very few compared to other countries. The key challenges remain, but we are working on them. The lacking MSP legislation in Angola and Namibia. We are a bit concerned about the situation that we might have very relevant marine spatial plans, but no legal framework to implement them. And then, of course, the long-term funding, as currently most of the MSP activities on regional and national levels are funded by the MARISMA project, which runs until 2020. But the governments are aware of that and are looking into institutionalizing MSP. And with that, the next slide will just show you some links to some further reading, because there have been some publications on regional and MSP and national MSP. So if you give me the next slide, people can get the links. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I invite any questions.